Hello, everyone. This is Andy Vargas speaking from Waiting Room, and my today's guest is James Squirrell from Australia. He's leading Modern Dental Group in Australia, one of the leading dental laboratories of the continent. So he will have some very interesting things to tell us. Hi, James. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Andy. I'm very well, thanks. It's the evening time for us, so. Any Australians watching? We've finished our day, and you're just beginning yours.
Yeah, and so how the news are full, of course, with what's happening now in the world, but of course here in Europe, we hear more about the European continent and some from the US because the news from there are always loud. But what's going on in Australia? How are you guys?
Well, I mean, look, I guess in comparison to Europe and in the States, we're actually doing really well. So the Australia has been, I guess, sort of locked down for about 1 month. Not to the extent of Europe, though. We've still had a fair amount of freedom. Most businesses are still operating. We can still go to the shops. We can still exercise in the park. We have restrictions, of course, on social distancing, and the dental industry has had very severe restrictions. But for the most part, we have a lot more freedom than you guys over there. The virus seems to be getting under control in Australia and in New Zealand. The number of new cases has slowed right down, which is fantastic. Of course, the country has suffered greatly. We've got hundreds of thousands of people out of work. A lot of people who have become sick, who are struggling to pay rent. But I think if we look at how Australia has compared to Europe, I think we can be a little bit count ourselves lucky that we live so far away from the rest of the world.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the restrictions towards dentists and the dental offices were severe and strict. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, sure. So Australia and New Zealand have had pretty much 1 month of restrictions, which has really only allowed dentists to do emergency work. So really pain relief, but no work that involves aerosols. For us as a dental laboratory, of course, that means no crown and bridge work, no dentures. A lot of dentists have totally closed their practices for a few weeks. And really there's been emergency clinics set up around the place. And some dentists have been opening just when there's an emergency case to do. We are hopefully through the worst of those restrictions. So Australia and New Zealand this week have moved to a slightly lower level of restriction where they can still restricted from doing work that generates aerosols, but they can see patients for routine checkups. Fortunately, we'll see dentists starting to open their doors this week. There will still be restrictions in terms of, I imagine, the number of patients that they can see every day. Of course, more PPE that they'll need to wear. But there's certainly positive signs that the industry has perhaps come out of the worst of this situation. And there's some, I guess, speculation now that restrictions will ease further in the weeks ahead.
And how do you prepare as a lab and as suppliers and partners of these doctors? Because of course your services are depending on what the doctors can do. So of course you're waiting for even these slighter restrictions to fade away. How do you prepare your company on that?
Yeah, look, it's been very difficult. This is unknown territory for us. We've been working with very imperfect information around the restrictions on us as a business and the restrictions on dentists. We've had to change our plans 50 times, on a daily basis. You think you know which way the business is going to head, and then you need to stop and reassess and head in a different direction. We're very fortunate that in Australia we've managed to keep all of the businesses open throughout this whole period. Obviously, the activity level has been greatly reduced, but all of the businesses have been open for any work that does come in. In New Zealand, we were required to close the laboratories there totally. So the staff there had 4 weeks at home in isolation. So yes, very little activity. Of course, we do the same things that every other company is doing. We've brought in flexible work arrangements, a lot of people working from home, greater infection control procedures within the office, steps to enforce social distancing within the workplace. When all of this kind of kicked off, we decided quite an early stage that we really wanted to take a people-first approach. The crisis going on is much more than just about our company. It's about society. It's a public health issue and an economic issue. And so we really wanted to make sure that our staff were safe and healthy and that we took care of them as best we could. And to that extent, we've kept all of our staff on. Everyone's still getting paid. Obviously, their workloads have varied significantly, but we've really tried very hard to make sure that when this crisis does pass, we want our company to be in as strong a position as possible, and that means having all of our staff with us and engaged, and knowing that we've supported them through the process.
Yeah, I think I'm very happy you're saying this. I think this is a very healthy way of thinking as a business owner and someone who is managing a company. I truly believe that we also have now a social, how to say, we also have to help our employees and look after them, and not only from, of course, these companies and these decisions will also lead to a position probably when the market is opening up, that you will be stronger than your competitors who sent their employees away. So this also has a business perspective, but it has a really strong social perspective as well.
Yeah, look, I think there's always a lot of discussion around the social contract that exists between a business and the rest of the community. And perhaps what might come out of this from a business point of view is a reassessment of where do we actually stand in society. It is our only objective and obligation to generate value for our shareholders. Is our obligation to provide a safe work environment and look after our people. Do we have an obligation to be paying a fair amount of tax and contributing to the health systems and the social welfare systems that are in place? So, perhaps one of the outcomes of this is that businesses think a little more widely around why they exist and why they're allowed to exist within society.
And so dental lab is a really interesting mix between a business where you can send your employees home for home office, but you're working with physical data, with physical products as well, and a dental lab is really a place where things are coming in from a clinic, which might be contagious, and also you do things with those materials, and then you send it back, which can be again contagious. How do you overcome this? How do you see this thing?
Yeah, look, we've always had very strict protocols in place around infection control. What a lot of dentists might not realize is that every case that they send to us as a dental laboratory, we're disinfecting it on receipt. Of course, we assume that the dentist has done that as they're required to, but we disinfect every single case before our technicians start working on it. We also disinfect it when we finish the case and before it gets packed up and returned to the dentist. I guess dental laboratories exist in a whole range of sizes, from very small operations to much larger ones like ourselves. And it's really been important to us that we are absolutely state of the art in the way that we manage infection control. So we have processes that are in line with the CDC, with Australian dental regulations. We've always had our infection control procedures overseen by clinicians, by consulting dentists. So we've always been very confident that we can handle cases in a safe manner. And of course, there's been additional protocols that have gone in place just over the last month or two.
Mm-hmm. How's the digital dentistry going in Australia?
I would say slower than Europe. We've certainly seen a massive increase in the use of intraoral scanners in the last 12 months. I think we're probably at a little bit of a tipping point under which every dentist has seen a scanner firsthand or has a colleague that's used one. So there's still barriers to entry. Within our labs, at Crown and Bridge work, we're seeing maybe 30% of work comes in digitally rather than physical impressions. And that's a massive increase from just 12 months ago. Within the Australian market, we see a lot of 3Shape, lots of iTero, increasingly scans from Medix, a little bit of Carestream. But I think dentists are starting to really appreciate the value that an intraoral scanner can bring to their practice, not just from an impression taking point of view, but from the point of view of patient comfort and managing your workflows within the practice. I think I've always been a little dubious about the commercial aspects of an intraoral scanner in terms of, if I use a scanner, I'll save on impression materials and freight, and that makes it worthwhile. I don't think that business case quite works out. But when you're factoring in patient experience and the ability to use this as a patient record-keeping tool, I'm a big supporter of intraoral cameras. What we see as a dental laboratory is that the remake rate of cases that we receive digitally is significantly lower than physical impressions. Of course, you can get bad intraoral impressions the same way you can get bad physical impressions. But we get better results if we receive a digital file. And that's perhaps one of the commercial benefits of scanners that dentists perhaps don't appreciate.
Well, and probably it also eases your workflow, right? I mean, not receiving physical data as a first step might be also something very interesting in such a situation as currently.
Yeah, to an extent. Look, when we receive a digital file, there's still a manual process in logging on to the scanner company's portal, extracting the records that we've been sent, importing that into our own job management systems. Some of the scanner companies have very good kind of back ends where we can extract that data automatically, and that's a big time saver for us. Others, it's actually a slow and clumsy process, and if you have enough work, you can probably pour stone models in a batch process quicker than you can exporting one file at a time from the back of the intraoral scanner systems.
Now we don't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now it's perfect. Yeah,
good.
Yeah, now it's great. Okay, so and what is now your estimation? When will the business go back to normal, and what does normal mean? So what will be the new type of normal?
That is the impossible question, Andy.
Yeah,
Look, I think for Australia and New Zealand, from next week, we'll start to see dentists picking up removable cloth cases, splints, mouth guards. So we'll start to see some of that work coming back. I think restorative cases, crown and bridge and implants, it might be a month before we really see that start to return in any volumes. I would imagine that if we have another conversation 2 months from now, I think our business will be largely back to normal, but just at greatly reduced volumes. I think the great unknown really is how deep is the economic impact from this pandemic. I mentioned before, we've got hundreds of thousands of people who don't have jobs now that did 2 months ago. That's going to have a really big impact on people's ability to spend money on healthcare. And I think the sort of dentistry that we touch on as a lab, implants and dentures and crowns, we know that an element of that is related to consumer confidence and consumer spend. It's not all essential dentistry. If we look back at our activity levels over the last few years, we know that when consumers are spending money on TVs and cars and new houses, they're also spending money on dentistry. When they're not buying furniture and doing house renovations, they don't do dentistry either. So, I think we might be in for quite a long and deep recession under which there's just fewer implants getting placed and fewer crowns getting cut. But I think in terms of us as a business, I think we'll be back to normal in 2 to 3 months, just at reduced activity levels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, let's hope so. Yeah.
Look, I think we are really lucky to be at this end of the world. Australia refers to itself as the lucky country. We've got, the beautiful countryside, lovely weather. We've got abundant natural resources, and we're a long way from Europe and from the US and from Asia. And I think that's protected us to a great extent from the really worst impacts of this virus. So I think probably we'll bounce back a little faster than perhaps much of Europe does.
Yeah. And beside having a lot of headaches and things to do probably in the last couple of weeks as a business owner and a business manager, did you manage to change some things in your habit, or what about your private activities, hobbies? How did you live it through?
Well, I've grown a beard, so that's one thing. I've been working from home pretty much exclusively for 5 or 6 weeks now. I've been doing a lot of cooking, trying lots of new recipes. My partner's also working from home, so we're kind of sharing the house, and we decided early on that we would try to go out for a walk for 1 hour every single day that we were working from home. I think we managed that 3 or 4 times, and we haven't been out for a walk since. So, the last month or so has been very challenging. We are all working from home, and it's been hard work because there's none of the normal day-to-day activities that we do. There's these really big challenges and problems that we don't normally have to face, and that's been hard work for everybody. I'm very lucky that from a work perspective, I have a truly exceptional management team that work with me, who are practical, creative, flexible, and a really big support for me. They're probably watching at the moment, so I kind of have to say that. But I am actually very lucky to have just a super solid team around me. It makes those difficult decisions a lot easier when there are people that you trust to give you good advice and tell you if you're doing something stupid, and provide alternative ways of thinking. So, yeah, really good team at work, and a nice, safe and healthy environment at home as well. Yeah,
great. Well, it's very good to hear that, and Yeah, and thank you very much for accepting my invitation. And it was really interesting to listen to your perspective as a dental lab owner, and also hearing from Australia, because we really like you guys, but you're really far away. So we don't hear much news about you, but it's good to hear that you're safe and fine.
Yeah, we are, and all the staff are well. All of our friends and family are well. And yeah, come down for a visit, ND. You're welcome anytime. I'll show you around Sydney.
I will. You know, I promised it. I will. When this thing is over, when you open up your country again, I'm gonna be there.
Excellent. Okay.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, James, and stay safe, and good luck also for reopening your business.
Thank you so much. Pleasure, Andy. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
And thank you for everyone for watching. We will continue it next week with other interesting topics and discussions. So stay safe and see you next week. Goodbye.